Hey everyone, welcome back to another video. In this week's video, we are going to look at gates and creating gated synths in the likes of Fret Again and Bicep, and it sounds like this. Okay, let's get into it. So for this, we are going to use the Peak. I love using it, and it's really easy to demonstrate everything that's going on here. So I find that this is a really good option to use. And then within Logic, we just have a basic session. You can see I've written some bits and pieces here to get us going. So the first thing we're going to do is initialize the patch, and then it sounds like this. We're going to make sure that we have all three oscillators turned up, and then we're going to change oscillator 1 to a sine wave. We're going to make sure that we have oscillator 1 tuned down and give it a little bit more weight, and then oscillator 2 and 3 is going to be pitched up 1 octave. So that gives us this. Pretty kind of obnoxious sound, but we'll get there. And then from there, we're going to thicken up the sound. So as you've probably seen with many of my videos, we're going to slightly detune. So make sure that's set to 0 so you can hear. And then if we there we go, we're starting to get some bit of a thicker sound there. We're going to go to voices, and we're going to turn unison up to 8, and I think that's pretty much it for this section. Next, we're going to look at the filter and the envelopes to make sure everything's going correctly. Let's bring the filter down to, we'll keep it up for now while we're doing the sound design so you can hear everything that's going on. One thing that I want to do is I'm going to add a fair chunk of the overdrive and the distortion. So let's crank those up to about 2/3 on each. So, and you can hear that makes it sound really unstable, and I find that kind of adds to that more organic sound rather than just having a stagnant sort of sound going across. So from here, we're going to add a little bit of envelope, and this is for the filter envelope. And then we're going to go and make sure we've set the amp and the mod envelope. So let's pull the attack down. We'll go about 3/4 on decay. We want the notes to hold throughout the whole time that we play them. Because we're going to be sending a gate to it, that's what it's going to make it sort of turn off and on as it goes. So we want that note to be 100% all the time. So go full on that, and then release, we can keep about halfway. For the mod envelope, which affects the filter, let's bring the attack down. Decay just past halfway. The sustain, again, we're going to have that as full, and then release just below half. And then that's pretty much it for the sound. So that gives us this. You can hear it's almost like a respace style where it's kind of a little bit unpredictable and kind of moving around a little bit. I really like this style where it's just a lot of inconsistency across the whole a whole song. So when you listen to a sound, it doesn't kind of get a little stagnant and whatnot. From here, if you take a look at the screen, we have just some drums that you heard earlier in the sort of the demo. We have this as our trance lead. That's what is the MIDI being played. And you can see I've just got peak and it's sending the MIDI out. And then I have this, was just doing it for testing earlier, so we can just ignore that one. We can actually go and we'll just hide it away. Make it nice and easy. And then here we have our gate. Now I found that a lot of people, when they're explaining the bicep gate or sort of a trance gate, they use like kick drums and audio samples and stuff like that. And I find that they can be a little bit unpredictable, and it takes a little bit more work later when you're sort of adjusting the gate settings and everything like that. So using a sampler that just plays a sine wave or a synth that just plays a sine wave, you have a lot more predictability in the gate that you're producing. So for this, if I change it back to, go to stereo output, and if I solo it, and you can hear that it's just individual notes. Nothing crazy, but there's no wavering of the sound. When you play that sine wave, you're going to get that sine wave across the board. So here I've just written in this simple little pattern, and I found that using 30-second notes gives the best result. It kind of harks back to that the old sort of trance days where you would hear this sort of pattern. This. So all I've done is, if I change this to 30-second, and this is obviously just a repeating pattern over and over. We go, and I'll just leave that up there for a little bit. So if you want to copy it, because I found that while a lot of people could kind of explain the idea of what was going on, there wasn't anyone showcasing that sort of like classic trance gate sort of sound. So this is the one that I found works best for me, and hopefully this is what you're after. And it's also the one that I've heard in a few Fred Again songs. So that's the pattern there. And we're going to change this back again. We're going to change it to, and what I'm doing is I'm sending this signal to a trance trigger. So it's producing audio, and I'm sending that audio out to a bus as to trigger the gate. For some reason, you can't send it straight from a plugin to the gate within Logic. It might have changed, but this is the way I've always done it. Sending it to the bus, and then for the gate, if I come along, so now if I play this, you can see we're getting audio, but there's we don't hear any audio. Same as you would with for like sidechain compression and stuff like that if you have a ghost signal. So now this is the peak track. This is the audio coming in from the peak, and if I push play, you can hear it coming in there. And all I have on the actual track is the gate, and this is the gate setting. So you can see I have bus 25 selected, and that was where we were sending the audio from the sine wave, the sampler instrument, to trigger this gate. So we're sending it to bus 25. This is looking to bus 25 for its signal, and then I've got super fast attack, super fast release, because I want that obviously note on, note off sort of sound to it. I don't want that the notes to be sort of have a tail on them at all. So we can turn that on, and then turn it off. And it sounds okay, but I found for best results was to add a reverb prior to it. And then for the reverb, if I turn it on, I only have the wet. And I found that in a lot of Fred Again's songs, he has it so he either filters a lead in or he uses a reverb as the filter to bring it in. And when I added the reverb before the gate, it had the best results that I could sort of ask for. So makes it super washy, but because the gate is on after it, it kind of tightens it up a little bit as well. And the thing that I love about this lead is it has a really sort of tighter sound now, but when I open up the filter, it kind of creates this big sort of almost a super saw effect. And the other thing that I do like about having the reverb all wet is it's not so sharp with when you open and close the filter. So there's that delay in the sort of sound of it. So there is a demonstration of the first sort of way that you can get a more dialed in gate sound. So the next one we're going to look at is similar sort of thing, but we are going to use a chord progression. It's a more along the lines of what I would expect to hear in a Bicep style track, as opposed to that sort of trance gate that you would hear in a Fred Again song. Okay, so let's get into it. So we're going to initialize the patch for the next sound, and we can turn down the volume a little bit, and let's put the gate back on. So for this one, we're going to use we're going to have a saw, we're going to go with a square wave, and for the bottom one, we're going to go with a sine wave, and we want just over half volume for the oscillator 1, oscillator 2, sort of about 2/3, and almost 3/4 on the third oscillator. From there, we're going to tune up oscillator 1 octave, and then oscillator 3, because we want that as the weight, we're going to tune it down to 16 feet there. We're going to change the shape amount a little bit on the square wave, so we're going to get like a bit of a pulse width. So let's go to LFO 1. We can go over sort of around the 40 mark, and then if I turn the rate up, you'll hear this changing the shape pretty rapidly. We want it sort of around the 100, and then because it's going to give us a little bit of movement there, let's turn these back up again. And then we can make sure that we got these nothing detuned here, because they're all different shapes, so we're good with that. Envelope, we can go around 30, and then pull down the filter a bit, and you can hear now we kind of have that sort of organy sort of sound to it. Let's go and we'll adjust the amp envelope, which is going to be the volume of the actual synth. About halfway for the decay, all the way to 0 on the attack. We're going to go full again on the sustain, and then just below half for the release. For the mod envelope, we're going to go 0 again, about halfway, just below halfway for the decay. Sustain is going to be just a little bit more than decay, and then release is going to be about halfway as well. We're going to get a healthy amount of chorus to really thicken that sound up. Let's get a little bit more decay. Actually, bring that down a little bit. There we go. Takes a little bit to get the sound dialed in. And then maybe a little bit of resonance there. And then we've kind of got the sound that we're after. But with this one, if I put the gate on and we got the reverb on there, I found that adding the reverb after the gate for this sort of one helps a little bit more. But one thing that we want to look at for the gate is if we bring it up, you can hear that we have it so it's really sharp with the attack and the release. Obviously we want the attack nice and sharp, or for this instance I want the attack nice and sharp. But let's start messing with the release like we would the release on the mod envelope or the amp envelope. We want that tail a little bit more. So bring in the rest of the music. And then let's put the reverb after the gate. And then obviously we have only wet, and for this one we want a nice amount of dry. And just dial in the reverb a bit. And again, if you want to make it a little bit darker, you could take oscillator 1 and oscillator 2. And just take them down 1 octave. I think it sounds better when it's up, and then you can just adjust the filters to suit. So there we have 2 ways to use a synthesizer to trigger the actual gate. And another way that I've seen a couple of times on YouTube, and I've seen some other tutorials around the place like Future Music and Computer Music Magazine talking about this. And this way you can use random audio loops as a gate to trigger different synths and stuff like that. And so for this one, you can see I've just got this loop. This is the same loop. This is the same loop, and then this is another loop. And these can give you some like really nice happy accidents. The only thing with it is it can be like flicking through presets. You can keep flicking until you find something that you like, but you might not find something you like. So this can be a good starting point where you can start to edit the parts that you don't like and sort of trim it down so it becomes a pattern that you enjoy and that it works with the rest of the song. So for this, all I'm doing is I've just got it and I'm sending it to bus 26. Obviously, because this is audio, we could also just send it straight to the gate. But to keep in line with everything else, I've just got it sent to bus 26. And then if I come over to my peak track, we'll go to the gate. Instead of bus 25, where I was sending the synthesizer, we can go bus 26. And then we'll mess with the gate a little bit. We can solo this out and we'll solo this. You see if I have it, the threshold pretty low, it allows a lot of audio to come through. And then as I change that threshold, because if you look at the actual audio, you can see it had different amplitude across the audio there. So not everything is going to come through. Like these bits here, this is not necessarily going to get heard. And you can, unless I bring down the threshold a bit more. And then if I play that with everything else. And it's like a nice little more kind of organic way to make the gated sequences. Because you can see this is off the grid, so we're getting that little swing from the actual drum loops as well. And let's add that reverb in again. Make it a little bit more staccato. So that's about it for this week. Hopefully you got something out of it. We did a little bit of sound design, kind of getting the lead and the pad sounds down. And I showed you a couple of different techniques with gating and how you can kind of get that more traditional sort of trance gate or something a little bit more new school with that along the lines of what Bicep's doing these days. So, hopefully you enjoyed it. Hopefully I've inspired you to create something today. And until next time, see you later.